Welcome to the Life Work Podcast. We are rejoined today by Coach Josh Austin. And in our last episode, we left with a cliffhanger of you were moving into college when your faith started taking on a higher level of seriousness and reality for you. Mm-hmm. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, so you decide to go to college. Are you going on an athletic scholarship? Are you going to be a collegiate level athlete?
I signed with Central Baptist College. They were a junior college at the time.
Couldn't get a scholarship here, huh?
That's right.
Wow.
To be honest with you, didn't even know Williams, really.
Wow.
We've grown in that. I feel like we've changed that.
We're trying.
I think we're doing
really
a good
trying.
job of it. But signed with Central Baptist College because I thought I was going to the NBA. So
and that is a well trod path to the NBA through Conway.
Exactly. So I went there, and in my freshman year, I had a good year. I had a really good year my freshman year, and I remember starting my freshman year. That was the one thing that I knew I needed to, like, I wanted to start it off right. Like, I'm going to pursue the Lord in this, and I did. I really developed a really good routine of just getting in the Word and putting Him first, and things were just going well. I mean, I was doing better in my classes. You know, when I graduated high school, our guidance counselor told me not to go to college. She was saying, you don't need to go to college.
Wow.
That's right. And so I was actually doing very well academically. Everything was going well. And then I remember my sophomore year, going into my sophomore year, I had all these expectations. Like, that was the year, when you're a junior college, that's the year that, okay, now we got to work on getting scholarships to the 4 years. And it didn't start off that well. And it was mainly because I went away from, it was almost like, God, I've got it from here. Now I'm going to take it. And then I remember we were in a scrimmage game. We played Oklahoma Wesleyan in a scrimmage game. And that was a team, they were talking to me. They were kind of recruiting me a little bit. And we scrimmaged them, and I had 0 points, and I had 8 turnovers that game. And my grades were already suffering. Everything was not, it was just the opposite of what it was my freshman year. And I remember walking back to the dorm room, and I ran into a guy by the name of Will Frazier. And we walked in the stairwell together, and he just turned around and he asked me, he said, Josh, he said, he goes, are you a believer in Jesus? And immediately I said, yes, I am. Like, there was no doubt in that. Like, I had no doubt in my salvation in that. And I am. And he said, well, I just feel like something, and he didn't know me. I just feel like something's off. And I literally just sat there in that stairwell and we sat there for an hour, and I just opened it all up. And then told him out everything my freshman year and did this. And he said, okay. And then this is what he said. He said, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I don't care about any of that. He said, but there is one thing you did say that I feel like is the problem. And I said, what is it? He said, your life, your relationship with Jesus. Where is it? And I'm like, man, I went away from that. I went away from spending time with Him and just soaking myself in Him and His Word. And I mean, right then was when I realized, okay, Lord, this is more than, it's almost like a team. Like, you don't want me just on the team. You want all of me. You want me to, and not just necessarily, it's not for basketball. It's not for my grades. It's not for this, and this. You want me. And that was, at that moment was when I realized, okay, I need to embed myself in Him. And once I did, and I told him, I'm like, and I don't care about basketball. I don't care about my grades and all this kind of stuff. A lot of people say, okay, well, my life was bad, now it's good. Like, I still had struggles. Mm-hmm. But at that moment was when I realized, okay, this is a relationship. This is something that He wants to spend time with me. And I did that. And when I did do that, I realized the Lord's going to take away what's most important to me to get back to him. And I realized that real quick. Like, he's a jealous God. He wants to be number one in my life. And that when that happened, and I still have faults. I still have days where I'm struggling and all that. But at that moment is when I realized, okay, this is different. This is what I need to be doing. I need to be just pursuing him.
So when in all of this did you begin to sense God working for a calling beyond a college life, beyond collegiate level athletics, but a calling for vocation, a calling for a career ministry kind of thing? When did you begin to sense that happening, and what did it look like, and how do you think God was working through that?
Yeah, so I felt like probably shortly after that was when I was like, because at first I wanted to be a coach in high school, and the reason why is because coaching looked fun. Oh man, I get to be around sports all day, and I get my summers off. Like, it looked fun, and I loved the sport. It was shortly after that when I started like working with kids and stuff like that. Then I'm like, this is what I love doing. And so as it went on, I ended up changing my major, and I went back and I'm like, yeah, I want to get into coaching. I want to get into this because it's not just having the summers off. I want to be in there. Like, I love the sport, but I want to use this as a platform to minister to. I can preach Jesus by using basketball as a tool. And instead of me just out there like a crazy loon yelling it, now I can be like, hey, let's work on triple threat. Let's do this. Hey, by the way, do you know Jesus? And it didn't work that way.
Were there any coaches or mentors in your life at this time that were kind of speaking into your life about calling and ministry and coaching and all that?
Yeah, I felt like I had two coaches, really. I had one coach that really instilled in me about the importance of showing up every day and busting your tail to win. And that was Coach Keener. He's now the athletic director at Glen Rose, Arkansas.
Okay.
But then I had the spiritual side I had was Coach Stan May. Him and his wife, they run a camp in Glen Rose called Family Farm Christian Day Camp. And he was my 7th grade coach, but he was also our FCA sponsor. And
was he the father of the quarterback?
He was the father of the quarterback.
I'm kind of picking up here.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So he was like a second father to me in that, where he has given me so much advice along this path, and kind of going into that, fast forward to when I got my first job. I remember I was graduating college, and I had an opportunity to go to Central Baptist and volunteer as an assistant. Did not have any money, but I could substitute teach locally. And I remember I went to him, and my dad was like, hey, you need some money.
Yeah.
Coach May was like, no, you need to go coach. You need to go do that. You need to go do that. And I felt it. I'm like, all right, Lord, here, I'm going to go into this. And I'm going to, hopefully my substitute teaching.
It's like a big step of faith for you.
It was. It really was. And then kind of fast forward, I did. And I remember halfway through that year, I was volunteering. And halfway through the year, there was a park in Conway, and I still go to it when we go play CBC. I'll go to that park before the girls play, because it was like my prayer park. And it was that way when I was in college, and that's where I went. And I went there, and I really felt led. I'm like, Lord, I want to be a head college coach. I want to be that. But if you don't want me to do this, but I really feel this urge. And this was one of the only times I've ever, where the Lord answered a prayer so quickly. Because I got home, and I had a little trailer. I lived in a little trailer in Conway. And I got home, and the head coach that I was working with called me and said, hey, I'm stepping down as the head coach, and you're going to get a call from the AD. He's going to offer you the interim job. Would you want it? And I said, yes.
So how long had you been the volunteer coach?
For a semester.
That's your first kind of
I
official.
was 24 years old.
Wow.
24. Matter of fact, the oldest player on that team, who was an All-American, was 2 months younger than me. And he was, remember, I played there when they were a JUCO.
Right.
I was the one that showed him around campus when he came on his recruiting visit.
And now you're looking at being the interim.
And now I'm going to be the head dog, the interim, yes.
And did that move from interim to regular full-time?
It did. So whenever I got off the phone with him and the AD called me, I remember I sat in the bathroom and I cried because I was scared to death. And that was when I stepped in as the interim. We made it to the national tournament, and they removed the interim tag. And then I always say God didn't open a door. He kicked me through one.
How long were you there?
I was there for 5 years.
So you've been doing this gig
20.
for 20 years. Okay. And how did you wind up here?
All right. So we used to play Williams.
Yeah.
And I would always, in Williams, when you don't know what's around Williams, because Williams is on this bypass, it's like it's the middle of nowhere, and then boom, there's a university.
Yeah.
Like you don't realize that there's town, there's people.
Yes.
It's a great place.
Yes.
You know that.
I do. I do.
So we used to play them, and I remember Coach Ryder was stepping down, and I messed around with the idea, and I turned in my stuff. Because at that time, my wife was also the dean of students at Central Baptist College. She was 24, 25. And we were looking for a change. We just had our oldest daughter, and we were looking for a change. And Jeff Ryder called me, and at first I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to go to Williams. And then we prayed about it, and then Dr. Swain called and offered us the place to come up for an interview. And I remember me and my wife, we came up here, and immediately when we're sitting in his office, we just knew it right then. It was a piece. And I remember after that interview, we're driving, and this time the highway wasn't finished, so we had to go through Swifton and Tuckerman and all that area. And I remember we get all the way to Tuckerman, and me and my wife finally say a word to each other. And we finally were like, this is the place. This is where we got to be.
So share with our listeners 2 or 3 things about your coaching philosophy as it pertains to your ministry. How do you see the convergence of your work as your ministry?
I believe, and I do, I believe that, number one, we were all created with the competitive wire. Like we were wired with this where everyone wants to win. And I think the reason why is because the whole reason why Jesus came was so we could win. And
win in him.
And win in him.
Yeah.
And so, well, the one thing that, man, it's been crazy through my whole 20 years, seeing how the Lord has even worked in me to where now with these young men, I'm taking young men that are coming from backgrounds where, number one, they may never have opened a Bible.
Yeah.
Or number two, a church has done them wrong.
Yeah.
Or they've seen them do them wrong. And now we can bring them both together. Like, okay, well, let's take the facts. The facts are you want to win. Yeah, I want to win every basketball game. Okay, you want to win. Well, I'm going to show you, we're going to work together with Pastor Jamar, who comes in and works with us as a team chaplain. We're going to do everything we can to show you that, look here, that when you win in life and you win this way, that, okay, you lose a basketball game, okay. But when your identity's in basketball, winning and losing is detrimental to you. Like you're riding this roller coaster of wave. So I feel like in my philosophy, one thing that we try to do is we use basketball as the tool to introduce them to Jesus. And we take that, like I said, we always tell everyone in our program, winning is the most important thing. And then they come in and they're like, well, it is. and this is what we're talking about. You got to win this way.
Yeah. So fast forward to last year. I want to kind of get a little deep here. Probably one of the more challenging years vocationally, and a summer that presented a unique trial. So real briefly, just kind of walk us through last year and how the Lord may have orchestrated things in your life to draw you closer to Him through the season, through your coaching experience here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the worst season of our life. That was the one thing we always talk about. I've got the best wife, the best woman that just is a rock, and we walked through it together. But going through the season we went through last year with the losses and dealing with other things and people not buying into culture, not buying into what we were preaching, that's hard because you feel like you're losing. And I just clung to Galatians, where it's like, don't get weary in doing good.
Yeah.
And it was awesome because, real briefly, and I'll be real quick with it, but through that whole season, and then we had the fire at the house.
I'm going to get to that.
All right, I'm not going to talk about them. But you had that season and how the Lord was orchestrating, and He was putting people in our lives like players where I didn't have to work as hard recruiting. Like it was crazy. We had a player here from Jonesboro, and we talked about this at the conference tournament with our team and our team devotional, how God put every one of them in here, and I didn't have to work that hard to get them. God just put them there. And to this day, from last year, because I always felt like we lost last year. We just lost. But it's crazy because there's a couple guys that we had to remove from our program that still reach out to me, and we're talking about the Bible now. Based on, and if you would have told me that, like, it was hard. It was real hard.
Yeah.
And now the Lord's still working in them. And guys that didn't want to have anything to do with them, but they're realizing, they're like, hey, Coach, I was reading in this. And I'm like, wait a minute, you what? You were reading in Genesis? Like, what? Who just opens the book and starts reading Old Testament?
You got the right number? Is it the right?
So last year, I had to realize, and I realize it now, it wasn't about me, but it was about if I do what I'm supposed to do. And it was hard. It's hard walking around and you're thinking everyone's like, oh, there goes Coach Austin. They're having an awful season. Like, it's bad. Like, I didn't want to show my face to anything.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to walk around you. I'm just like, I can't get around.
Come on, man. Come on.
Like, I just couldn't. Like, I just wanted to get in my shell but then looking back on it, the Lord's just working. And He's working through those trials because He never promised that it was going to be easy. You know, He just promised He was going to be there with me. And I remember one morning in particular being on my knees just crying. And I remember my wife coming over there and just putting her hand on my shoulder. And it's awesome.
Rough year on the court. And then the summer came, and a very significant tragedy befell two of our university families, and you were one of those two. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what happened?
Yeah.
And then how the Lord moved through that.
Absolutely. So we go every year to a coach's family camp in North Carolina.
By the way, I want to point out to you, you're doing the same thing for your family that your dad did with you. We're going on vacation in North Carolina, and I'm going, it's going to be a working one, but we're going to go. I just want to point that out.
That's right. We go to this camp, and it's FCA puts it on, and we've been going for the last 13 years. Well, anyways, we've always came straight back, and we never stay the night. And some friends of ours, Tim Kraft, who's the head men's basketball coach at Western Carolina, they invited us over to their house for lunch, and we did. And then we stayed the night in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was 4th of July night. And I remember I got a phone call about 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, your house is on fire.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Now, for our listeners, we have several of our families, faculty, coaches, administrators that live in an area called the Cove. During World War II, those houses were officers' quarters. Then when Dr. Williams acquired the property, he acquired those houses. So at the time, we had 27 houses built during World War II, and they're full. We have coaches, faculty, staff living back there. That's where you are living.
yes. So we they got that phone call at 1:30 in the morning, and house is on fire, and I'm FaceTiming watching my house burn. My family's not awake, and long story short, I ended up calling the insurance company, go ahead and claiming it, and we had some renter's insurance, which was good. And then I had to wake up my wife and tell her. We cried there in the bathroom at the hotel. And then we had to wake up our girls. They were excited about going, or like they were wondering why we were waking them at 4 a.m, and had to tell them. And the first thing that I remember was Langley, my oldest, crying because she was worried about our neighbor's daughter, who is about the same age. And just that moment, I'm like, that she's not thinking about herself.
Yeah.
And anyways, we come home. We didn't know what we were coming home to, and we come home and we walk into the house, and my daughter and my wife walk to my oldest's room, and it's just torched from the top to bottom. She lost everything, and just hearing her cry was the hardest thing. But I remember, the one thing I remember is just turning around, and you and other employees were there just waiting on us.
Yeah.
And at that moment, it was awesome because you didn't feel like you were alone. And it's different than the season. The season when you had the horrible season, we felt like we were alone. No, but that's what's so cool is that here we didn't feel alone. Like it was like the Lord was like, yeah, this is awful, but I got you.
Yeah.
Like, and so we never had to worry about what was next. Like I remember us coming out and you guys came in and said, okay, here's what we're doing. You're going to stay in this apartment, then you're going to move to that house. Like we didn't go without. And that was awesome. Like looking back on it, and we're sitting there. I remember my wife, she works for another school, and she's sitting in the apartment. We got pictures of her at this little makeshift table doing work, and we're doing clotheslines. We look like it's like a refugee camp almost, like just clothes just hanging everywhere, and we were just I don't know, it's just like God used the people here to help us and carry us through. And it does still sting, and we still think about it often.
Sure.
But just knowing that the Lord, through y'all, like had us.
Yeah. Someday, not today, don't know when, that's God's prerogative, He will ask you to steward that experience. I always think of Luke 22, where Jesus and Peter are talking, and the Lord tells him that he's going to deny him. Mm-hmm. Peter denies the denial, and Jesus said, nope, you're going to do it. And then he tells them, I'm praying for you that your faith may not fail. And when you return, encourage your brothers. And I have latched on that phrase, when you return, encourage others. Peter will have a responsibility of stewarding that horrible failure that was public and humiliating. It was a failure even in his job as an apostle. His job was to speak for Jesus, stand for Jesus, defend Jesus, preach Jesus. And when it came time to do it, he dropped the ball horrifically. There would come a time, maybe more than once, we don't know all those, when I believe he would be asked to steward that pain and that failure, that trial, to help others. So sometime, Josh, knowing how the Lord works, at least in my life and in the life of others, he may work in your life too.
Mm-hmm.
And you may draw upon that experience and that trial, what God taught you, and encourage others. You may have already done it. It may already be going on now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what me and my wife, we kid around, but we're serious. It's like, okay, next time we hear of anyone that their house burned,
Yeah.
like, we're there. Like, because we actually, what was so emotional was we saw the hands and feet of Jesus.
Wow.
And we got to see that.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about when we lived through Hurricane Katrina and a lot of those similar experiences of community coming together, community supporting, dealing with loss. We didn't have much, but we had colleagues that did. Yeah, it's a thing. And God asked us to use those things to help others.
Yes, sir.
Well, Coach, we're proud of you.
Well,
we're grateful the Lord led you to Williams. We're grateful that he has and continues to carry you and sustain you. And we appreciate not just the coaching, but the ministry of coaching and the impact that you're having on the lives of so many of your athletes and beyond and through them, the life on our campus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Grateful to have you here today.
Yes, sir. It was fun.